Peng, why don't you introduce?
So our third and final, certainly not least, speaker is P N Balji, who's familiar to many of us in media circles. I was in the talk, especially given the familiarity with the blogging since 16 years.
Okay, it's always very quite tragic to be the last speaker, because everybody else said everything else, and what else is there to say? So I thought that, and in a way I anticipated, knowing who the speakers here, that it will be purely from a technical, purely from a law point of view. And so I would leave the law aside. And anyway, I'm not a good friend of lawyers, because in my experience in media is, if you give something, if you write something and show it to a lawyer, surely you cannot publish it. Surely you cannot publish it. So you try to subvert that or subvent that. But so I'll keep it to a very, my talk to a very practical level. And I think I've done a few talks in my time, and one of the things I noticed is that people want a how-to guide. Singaporeans are generally like that. You talk to them at a slightly higher level, they are not quite interested. Tell me, so what should I do? So I try and do that, a bit of that. But I think the first thing about, the first challenge, or the biggest challenge that bloggers face, in my experience with talking to bloggers, is that they are at a major disadvantage because they are operating with themselves. They don't have training. They have not been trained, and what they write doesn't go through checks by more experienced journalists. So they have that as a major obstacle, which then means they have to be extra vigilant. So I think that's they don't have experienced editors to look at them. But sometimes experienced editors are also dangerous. They become too sensitive. Sometimes things can be allowed, but it's pulled back. But there are the first thing about writing for a blogger, I think you have to get your facts right. I think one of you mentioned this. Get your facts right, because that is no way. If you're going to base your article on a fact that is wrong, that means I think you're already straight away failed. Second thing I found about bloggers, especially reading blogs, is they get emotional. And once you get emotional, I think that's where the problem starts. When you get emotional, then you will say a lot of things. And I've also found that in relation to emotional is that they are operating in isolation. They're just saying what they want to say. They don't realize that what I say, even if I'm talking to somebody, even if I'm emotional, I can see from the body language, oh, there's something she's not liking this, and I could change. But when I'm writing, there is no interface at all. I'm just talking to this machine. So if you, that one person that comes to mind is Amos E. I just read his blog post about his experience in Changi prison. And he just goes on and on and on, writes beautifully for a 16, 17-year-old boy, but he's using 4-letter words and he just doesn't care. So you can see that how this boy operates. He's there in his room, he's got this computer, and he just says whatever he wants. So I think the emotional factor is very important. And a few pointers on how to kind of write a blog and not get into issues of defamation. We didn't talk much about sedition. And in today's paper, you already got a minister talking about he's going to make So police report is not only made by ordinary citizens, but even the minister goes and makes a police report. And sedition, right? About the sedition about lady named Sankita Dhanapal, who has did a Facebook post. The speech that the minister gave at the press club on Malaysia, Chinese educated, Chinese schools, Malay schools, and the minister is not accusing her of sedition, but he says what she says may mean that, may have meant that I'm an anti-Islam person, I'm anti-Islamic. So I suppose it's for the police to prove whether that is sedition or not. So there's the element of sedition too. But coming to the points, I think the first thing is you have to be very, very thorough in your research. I think that research is something that I find people really don't do enough of. They are basing, most times they're basing it on memory. It's my memory. But memory is very dangerous to rely on. It may not be 100% accurate. You need what I call a sounding bag. A sounding bag. So when you write something, or before you write something, it is always good to talk to somebody you can trust. And when I mean trust, it's always good to have a person who will disagree with you. No point talking to somebody who will always agree with you. It's of no use. And also before writing, you have done your research. Finally, you have to decide, okay, what is it that I want to say? What is the point I want to make? I just recently wrote a commentary for Yahoo on National Day rally speech, the PM. So I was watching PM on TV, and the thing that really struck me was that it was such an electioneering speech. It was just, that was the thing that struck me most. And so I said, okay, since it struck me so much, maybe I should craft it around that. The second thing that struck me was that he was most of the time talking about his father and himself. So if I could divide the speech into two, that was how I would divide it. And then from there, how do I craft the article? I can be very straightforward. I don't have to beat around the bush. So my final intro, or my headline was the Lee and Lee rally. That was my headline. And then from there I went on to talk about the PM using the most important speech that he gives every year. This time, to me, he didn't talk like the Prime Minister of the country, but he talked like the Secretary General of the party. And is that a good thing? And then from there, tried to bring into a bigger picture that many people I spoke to that night after the speech didn't even think that it was such a bad thing. What's wrong with that? That's what it always happens, right? Conflict of interest. PA, grassroots leader signing checks for his own expenses. And that's being defended. Right? Oh, but there was no dishonesty there. That's a defense that was given. So using all that, so there is this PM speech, bigger picture, but you can still make your point very sharply without, I think, getting into trouble. I didn't get into trouble. Maybe it will come. What do you want to say? And also, how do you build up your argument one by one? You can start with a micro angle, and then you go into a big picture point of view, macro angle. And finally, is balance. I think balance is something I find that in our blogging community is really lacking. That they may have good reasons for it, and I'm not trying to influence them that you should be a bit more balanced, but I think the balance gives the article more respect. Right? So what do I mean by balance? To ask this question, have you given the other side of the story? Have you mentioned that? And then you can still have your point of view, which goes against that person's point of view. But I think the balance is extremely important.
You were saying
I finish it.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
You were saying that there were probably reasons why some bloggers are not balanced. Why
Yeah.
do you think?
I think they come on they believe that majority of them or the mainstream media is going one way, which is, if you look at our media scene, right? On one side you have the mainstream media, which is extremely and overtly pro-government. So they think that I have to take the other extreme, which is, government cannot do anything right. So maybe that is the approach, and maybe they think this is the way to go. That could be one. And secondly, I think they could be encouraged. They are being encouraged. They are very good, people applauding them. Or maybe they think they take this as their philosophy. This is what I think we should do for the good of Singapore. If the mainstream is giving this, I will only give this.
From a media ethics point of view, I was wondering whether you could share your thoughts on the poison pen letter affair.
I don't know. Okay, good.
Because I'm just wondering, right?
Yeah, I had it here, but I didn't. Go ahead.
This poison pen letter was sent, presumably, to the press,
Yeah.
and they know of it, right? Should they hold it back?
My view.
But it's news, so what do they do?
My view is, I think you mentioned Daniel Goh, and you did say that, and I did ask that question about whether just because I get a response from Daniel Goh, does that mean it is not defamatory? There have been examples years ago, or at least one example that I know of, where there were poison pen letters about a top Singaporean, and that Singaporean threatened legal action before the publication of the story, and they didn't do a thing. So that's the one point. That means that depends on who you are. Depends whether you are a threatening person, right? Whether I want to proceed with that story. Daniel Goh obviously didn't. I think that the media went to print too early on that story. Just by saying that I can get Daniel Goh's reaction, I've done my job. I think ethically is wrong. And today, if you read the Straits Times, they have got an interview with a girl, which they hid somewhere at the end of the story. The girl he was supposed to have an affair with said, we only had a professional relationship. Couldn't they have waited then? And even after that, do they want to proceed with the story? Right. So I think ethically is not something that should be done. But I can also see why it's being done, because they are all now fighting for eyeballs.
It's newsworthy as well.
Yeah, everybody is now fighting for eyeballs. So, and Daniel Chowpa was the one that broke the first story. And if you read the Straits Times, I think today, or did I read it somewhere else, which said that they were communicating with Daniel Goh. They couldn't get his reaction immediately. And then when his final reaction came, there was some miscommunication in the newsroom, and they went ahead with the story without Daniel Goh's response at first, which is horrible. You cannot use miscommunication as a reason.
Yeah, I have a question regarding what they said about how bloggers work alone. In your case, you've got decades of experience working in newsroom. So you know.
Yes. Better say years.
I would say centuries, last centuries.
Multiple years.
But a lot of bloggers, they don't have that kind of background at all. So how would you suggest that they get some kind of sounding board, or in fact, is it meeting like a group who would sound each other out, they've formed together a group that of sort of trusted bloggers who can give good advice?
That's a difficult question, but all I can say is that I'm always available. No, seriously, I'm always available.
You volunteer, sure.
Yeah,
because
volunteer.
because ISOC, we have a chapter, we have something called a site, Community of IT Experts, who give information when you get into some kind of issues. So if you're prepared to do that, we could put you on.
But it's not so much information.
No information, in this case it's sounding board,
guidance.
If you want, I'm
controversial piece
so I
of
think
the
and that is one. That second one is, actually if you notice now, we are at actually a very happy situation. There are more and more experienced journalists who have retired. Many of them are doing nothing. I can straight away give you names. Tan Baba. No, seriously, Tan Baba.
Yeah, right, sure.
Travel messages.
Okay.
All these people are out there with a wealth of experience, right? But obviously, either they are not coming together or they don't see the value of it. So I think that is.
We can look into that.
So second point is, when you look for a sounding board, you must make sure that you get people, of course, with experience. Secondly, people who are not the same way, they don't think the same way as you. Only then you will really get that challenge, which is what I do all the time. I have a few people who always disagree with me. Right? That doesn't mean I agree with them eventually, but their views are interesting, are very good to, and it becomes very robust. Discussion on the phone becomes very robust before the final article is published. Yeah. Is that? I don't know whether I answered.
No, that's good. Yeah, I mean, it shows the importance of having this kind of, like you say, sounding board. You know. Yeah.
And just because you have written something online and you haven't got into trouble, doesn't mean you won't get into trouble the next time around. I don't know how this finally will evolve. Defamation against online. So I think the government is a bit more relaxed.
Yeah, they're a bit more relaxed, yes.
A bit more, but to what extent they will be relaxed? It might depend on the next election result, it might depend on so many other things. So the bloggers need to have, actually they really need to be a bit, be responsible. Right? When you talk bad about somebody else, how would you do it? Would you go on a total onslaught, or would you go a bit more refined? And that's, I think, the thing that you use.
I suppose this applies to those who are aiming to create a respected and following, which sounds maybe redundant, but I am also aware of people who are having a blog because they want the sensational fact, and they could actually afford to get sued or maybe even arrested for a short time, because it would be great for eyeballs for them.
No, actually, what I have said just now is actually for those type of people. Not for those people like the Middle Ground, for example, or Mothership.sg, for example. I think they are set up by people, with quite a bit of experience, some traction, but it is those people who are, the so-called lone wolves. Right? Those are the people who really need the help. Maybe they don't understand the laws. Maybe they don't understand. They are just coming onto it for the first time. They're just writing it.
But they wouldn't know that they don't know. You know what I mean? They don't know that they don't know.
Or I wonder whether some of them
They think it's okay to write. They don't know they don't know. They don't know that this is being caused them. They get into trouble.
Exactly. Yeah. So only when they get into trouble they will know.
come,
But you have to stop that, right? But if you are a blogger, you should be reading all these things. You know what can happen. Asst is one example. Drawing Worm is another example. Celebrated example.
So could we offer, reach out to these, people and say, hey, can we help you to stay on the right side of the law?
It's offered.
Yeah,
I'm
no,
offering
to
myself.
Amos and to Roy, whoever else,
Yeah.
that we want to see you succeed, but not in a negative way, in a positive way. So can we help you? And I mean, it's up to them to accept or otherwise.
No, I think the way would be not to do like classes or whatever. I think it is when you have an article, you want it. Do you want it to be not vetted, but do you want it to be sent to somebody who will then tell you, I think this is not the way to go, or this can cause you problems, and then up to you to decide whether you want to change or not, and that's your business.
You could provide a service. Tell me if it's okay at I saw
the sounding board / or the chopping board.
Yeah.
Or the chopping board.
So the use of word vetting was actually very good because
no, I don't
some
like
people,
the word vetting.
I think it's too strong.
But
I don't
some
like
of
the
them
word. There's a censorship element to it. That's why I didn't want to use the word vetting. Sorry, go ahead.
Because I am thinking of some who specifically do not want sounding board.
Oh, then that's it. Then that's your business. Then that's your business. Then if they get into trouble,
it's pure self-expression.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. You can't stop people from jumping into the drain if they want to jump.
You can only point them to say, don't jump. Open your eyes, just check. Wear padded shoes. There's a drain ahead.
But even in mainstream media, right? I mean, when I was there, we have experienced, the one that comes to mind immediately is NKF. And the funniest thing about the NKF, it's a defamation case, right? The most unusual thing is, it was never proven whether it was defamatory or not. If you remember, the article was about the golden tab in the CEO's office. So he sued on the basis that I didn't have, so damaged my reputation, right? So I went to court. First 2 days of questioning, and T.T. Dore was on the stand, and Davinder brought all kinds of things, even to the extent of saying that T.T. Dore's wife's IU card was paid for by NKF. So those were the details that were coming out, right? And T.T. Dore just collapsed after the second day and pulled out. So it was never proven whether it was defamatory or not.
Wow.
In the end, right? That was a very unusual story.
You all have questions? Questions?
I got one question. I'm working with a bunch of other people to create talking about websites from an information perspective. Okay, in the UK, there's something called Your Next MP or Your Next Representative.org. What it is a site where you go to and put your postal code or your constituency name, and it lists all the candidates for that constituency. The information for those candidates is from publicly available sources. Your email address, if it's publicly available, whatever else. So, and the code is open code. So we are taking it and we are trying to make it available for Singapore. We're trying to make it available by the 1st. So 160, 170 names have to be added to the list, and we pull it in. So when you do something like that, this could be a question for any one of you also. If the information that I'm pulling in to show on a particular, so I put in my constituency, whatever, right? West Coast constituency. And it shows me the candidate's profile and all the details. And there's something wrong over there. I'm pulling in data from somewhere else. Am I considered a service provider? Would I be considered, where do I fall if something was wrong?
Are you taking data which is publicly available?
Publicly available.
And then you are concerned that what if you took data which was inaccurate, and when you published it, it ended up defaming somebody? I think it would be a publisher, because you would have to take responsibility for checking that the facts were accurate.
No, but then this is publicly
if it was
available.
merely technical information, is that likely to be defamatory?
maybe there's some website which said that this person did not pass his primary 6 exam.
Oh, I see.
Or maybe listed the O-level results, you know.
Or he cheated on his.
Or he's divorced when he's
Right,
actually not
okay.
divorced.
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, because this is the intention behind this is to give everybody a chance to have a view of this, whoever you are supposed to be under your, for your constituency.
I think if it was limited purely to publicly available information, there probably shouldn't be a problem, barring those situations we just mentioned. What occurred to me was that there's also the protection of, what's it called?
PDPA.
PDPA, right? Which is the, what's it called again? The
Personal Data Protection.
Data Protection Act, yeah. But I think that you are exempted if the information is already in the public. If the information was not in the public and you went around like ferreting it out
Sure.
from various private sources, then actually you could be under an obligation to keep that
Yeah.
private
So-
unless you got the consent of the.
So if it is publicly available, because this is something which I don't think anybody is going to do for the average citizen in Singapore. For me to vote, you have to go find from different sources, and this way you have a central repository, so to speak, of my constituency, and therefore these are the people contesting, and this is all their respective, links to whatever it is, and then you make your own decision based on whatever it is, right? So.
Yeah, I would think a safe way to do it is you crawl the person's LinkedIn and
Yeah.
Facebook and Twitter, which are their own self-published
Yeah.
public information. We are safe, pretty safe.
Yeah.
But when you start pulling things that other people have written about them, then
You probably have to do a lot of vetting and make sure that nothing.
So we can
dangerous,
take,
defamatory
we do
or,
even a subset. I mean, so it's like LinkedIn probably is fine. Your Twitter feeds, your Twitter tweets, Facebook maybe, and anything else that is publicly available. And if they're incumbents, so they have a page on the Parliament website, which I don't think they have, right?
Local site.
Yeah, if they have, and then their political party page. I think that's the current list that they have. They're putting it that way, and
It's interesting.
I think it's work.
so I mean, right now that's work in progress. So this afternoon the work starts.
Also, it's actually going to happen.
I'm trying to make it happen.
Oh, you have very short time to do it.
No, the code is there. The
Okay.
code is already been done by the
Oh, I see.
UK. In the
Okay.
UK, it's already been done. So if you go to your next,
Oh, and it's open
It's
source.
it's 100% open source, free software.
Okay,
So-
that's good, I think.
So the intention is what my intention was really to be able to have that. I want to have one more element to it, which was I, as a voter, I want to put my prerequisites. What am I interested in? Okay, these are the things I am interested in. So I wanted to be able to have a way to compare, say, of the 10 people or 20, not 10 people, 12 people potentially maximum number of candidates, right? Maybe more than that. How many of them meet my criteria in terms of I'm interested in, freedom of speech or whatever it may be, if they have stated those things. So give me some weightage. Says, oh, so and so has said that we have to abolish ISD. Okay, and that's one of my criteria. So therefore, he gets extra points. So a way for me to weight it. It's a lot more work to be
Yeah,
done,
a lot more work.
but that's something would be good to have. So that at least at the end, I'm not voting based entirely on that. This is just one more data point, so that I can pick it up and say, okay, when I go to the booth, I say, what does it say? Should I go which way? Then it's up to me to decide at the end. So, but that was my intent. But I think that one's harder to do. So what I ended up looking at is this availability from this yournextmp.org. It's a UK thing.
You need a lot more data to do what you just
Yeah.
suggested, because
So
otherwise you would just-
that would take a
there
longer
wouldn't be
period of time.
enough data,
Yeah. So maybe for the next time round. But it will take 5 years to make it.
To sort of gather, because I know that in India they have a site that captures the promises of politicians. What do they say before they get elected?
We need that as well.
Yeah, then they go and compare. Okay, once they got in, what did they actually do?
I mean, there is a lot of publicly available information. For example, all parliamentary debates are reported and are on the Parliament website. So actually, if someone could be bothered to go through all that, it would contain various statements made by politicians who are in Parliament, NMPs, NCMPs, and you could extract from there and then kind of summarize it, but it would require a lot of work, you know.
No, I think if you can crawl that, right? And
No, it's crawlable today.
You match what they say in Parliament with their profile page, then on the site, then.
So one of the things, I mean, this could be a long-term project for Internet Society, perhaps, I don't know, but at some point, I mean, this could be for the next election, just to have this depth and is done from a civil society perspective. I want to have a clarity. You said this.
No, but if you do an ad, I can imagine an ad whereby you would not do it and I wouldn't be able to do it. But to crawl and look at what someone has said, say I want to know what let's say Lim's views are on whatever, so his name and some keywords,
Sure.
and together crawl through.
Yeah, it's doable, but you need a little bit more machine learning tools and a whole bunch of things behind it. But it's a bit too short term for what we want to achieve here. But so my initial difficulty was I have to write this entire app is going to be taking some time. So looked around. Then I remembered there was this thing in the UK done 2 years ago, and they just used it for the UK election as well. So it is fresh from that perspective. And they are actually using that in Argentina and one other country, the same code base. But so we could potentially. I'm hoping to get this done by Tuesday.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I imagine the mainstream media will do something like this, isn't it? They're comparing, let's say, constituencies. What do they say?
They will do it on nomination day, I think, or the next day.
Right.
is
They have been
publication.
publishing a series of articles about
Yes, that's right.
candidates that have
Candidates.
come out
Yeah.
to
Yeah, they
present
ask
themselves,
them the
and
same
they ask them
questions.
some standard
Yeah.
questions,
Same-
haven't they?
same
Yeah, which I
questions.
thought was quite interesting.
Yeah, quite
so,
interesting.
yeah. So that could be kind of like a basis for comparison.
Right,
if you
right.
like.
So that could be something to capture as well.
Assuming it's available at no cost.
Yeah, right.
That's copyrighted though. Some of that, if it's like news reporting, Straits Times may not be very happy if you just copy that.
Well, if someone takes a feed out of somewhere.
Yeah. Copyright's another issue, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
So does that mean that content aggregator is not a publisher?
No,
That's why I
no,
said
publisher. It is a publisher.
It
would be a
It
publisher.
is,
So
yeah.
it would it's still subject to the class license.
No, but you're saying this is news,
Yeah.
so news should not be copyrighted. But the way they present it, that format is copyrighted, right?
Well, I think it would be copyrighted, right? If it's published in the newspaper, the text is copyrighted, so you couldn't just sort of say, oh, I'm just going to pull this off the Straits Times website and reproduce it on my website. I think that would be a copyright issue.
No, they asked the question, so the part is copyrighted. But the news is somebody interested in, say, keep some special, let's say Pet Python, for example, right?
Yeah.
That's in itself
Oh, sure,
copyrighted,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So that's what I mean. The news is not copyrighted.
Yeah, if you re-express the idea in
Yeah.
your own words, I guess that would be fine. But that would of course require work.
That's right. That's the issue.
Yeah, there's a lot of work involved.
But if you get enough people in, more
Yeah, I suppose
people
if you have
so that-
volunteers and so on,
volunteers,
it
yeah.
could be doable.
Yeah. So how does you could? I mean, if you can get people to volunteer to gather stuff on the site,
And of course, we're fortunate that we're not that big a jurisdiction. There aren't
Yeah,
that
that's
many
right,
candidates.
that's
We're not talking about thousands of candidates.
Yeah.
We're talking about a fairly small
Yeah.
number of candidates.
Right.
And it was interesting, the UK one, the smallest number of candidates in a constituency was 6
Smallest number.
competing. 6, no, 5 or 6. The largest was 16, if I'm not wrong.
Wow.
Number of candidates competing in one constituency.
And they don't have GRC.
They don't have
It's all
GRC. It's individual. They fight it out.
No,
It's
but I watched this. I think this John Oliver or John Stewart, the piece, and talking about how they can campaign and raise funds and how much they actually spend in their local elections. It's a
Sure.
very small amount of money.
yeah.
It's 5 figures. It's in fact, under 5 figures. It's a few £1,000s.
Yeah.
So they're actually out there sourcing on the street talking about funding and run it. Whereas here you can't. You can't run the election.
One of
with
the ideas that came
4
up
figures.
was can we have a Kickstarter to fund my election deposit?
Oh, I don't see why
Yeah,
not.
yeah.
There's no
That's
risk.
in
Oh,
the
well,
same
no.
Provided the
Political
funders are
yeah.
provided the funders are Singaporeans.
Yes.
But I need to know who
Yeah.
they are.
Political
Yeah,
Donations
right.
Act, you would
Yeah,
have to
that's
comply
right.
with all the
That's
terms
right.
there.
Yeah.
But I believe that if individual donations are less than $5,000 each, then you don't have to report the names and all that, which will make it easier.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but I think you might still have to
You
report.
don't have to report, but if they ask you,
I don't think you need to report
don't
the
have to.
individual names of the
Oh,
donors,
okay.
but it still cannot be from foreigners.
Okay.
And I think you would still have to give an overall report about the amount of donations you received. But the idea is that big donors are, people want to know who's backing you. But if it's all like small donations and all that, I think it would be okay. But clearly a candidate would have to make sure that the PDA is complied with, otherwise that will be a problem. They won't get a certificate to present on nomination day, and then that would be an issue.
We are going to stop the recording. The discussion will continue, but we're running out of battery and
Okay.
Come back.
okay, you can change the battery and we can restart again. But thank you.